President al-Assad issues a decree granting general pardon for all the penalties stipulated in some of the provisions of the military service and military punishment laws. Head of the UN Department for Peacekeeping Operations called on all parties in Syria to move towards finding political solutions to the crisis. Russia denounces the terrorist attacks that took place in Syria recently. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our news for today. President Bashar al-Assad today issued Legislative Decree number 30 for 2012, granting general pardon for all penalties stipulated in some of the provisions of the military service and military punishment laws. Head of the UN Department for Peacekeeping Operations, Harvey Ladsous, has called on the countries of the region to take additional steps and help implement Kofi Annan's six-point plan. He urged them to exercise pressure on all concerned parties to cooperate with the observers to solve problems peacefully. Ladsous said there is an urgent need for the halt of violence in Syria by all sides and for a move towards political solutions to the crisis of the country. He added that the monitors came to Syria in order to carry out Annan's plan, and they agreed with the government to be neutral and unarmed and to work for protecting citizens in accordance with the jurisdiction they were given. Ladsous pointed out that the monitors are now present in 5 areas, namely Damascus, Homs, Hama, Daraa, and Idlib, and they are constantly patrolling those areas. Ladsous said there are 24 monitors now, and the number will increase in the upcoming 2 weeks. In a statement to the press, the spokesman of the UN Observers Mission in Syria, Singh, said that the UN observers are performing their task appropriately across the Syrian territories.
We now have 31 military observers here in the supervision mission in Syria, and work is going on. Today the operations will continue. The teams are already in the areas, as you know, Homs, Hama, Daraa, Idlib, so in their areas they will be carrying out activities. The team from Damascus, as usual, will go to areas around Damascus.
Russia strongly denounced today the wave of terrorist operations that ripped through Syria recently, affirming that such attacks aimed at foiling UN envoy to Syria Kofi Annan's mission. Russia Today website has quoted the Russian Foreign Ministry as referring in a statement to the terrorist operations that took place on the 27th of last April, which were followed 3 days later by the explosion of 2 booby-trapped cars in Idlib city, which targeted government institutions. The ministry added that Moscow strongly denounces the terrorist operations and draws attention to the fact that the terrorists are in fact launching a big campaign aimed at undermining stability and thwarting Annan's plan. The Russian Foreign Ministry pointed out that the terrorists launched the wave of recent blasts simultaneously with the arrival of the head of the UN Monitors mission in Syria. An armed terrorist group assassinated Corporal Kamal Muhammad al-Zabi in the city of Busra al-Sham in Daraa countryside. A source and the governorate said that terrorists opened fire at Corporal al-Zabi and his son in front of their house, killing him and seriously wounding his son. Another terrorist group assassinated Corporal Murai Znika from the law enforcement troops in Daraa suburb in Mahaja town. The martyr tried to defend himself, but they shot him dead and wounded his 70-year-old relative, Anna al-Bakr. Syria, one of the oldest democracies in the world, looks forward to the upcoming People's Assembly elections to usher a new era and build a new Syria in accordance with its new constitution.
The People's Assembly has concluded its 9th legislative cycle. Some of its members may have the chance to take part in the new parliament, but this can only be decided by the ballot boxes. 7,195 candidates, 10% of whom are women, are competing for 250 seats. The competition percentage is thus 28 candidates for each seat. 2,932 carry university degrees, a positive indicator for representing all brackets of Syrian society. The competition for the first forthcoming legislative cycle will be conducted according to a new contemporary constitution. One must recall in this context that Syria is one of the oldest democratic countries in the world. In our contemporary times, the first legislative representation formula known in our country was in 1919. The first Syrian conference was held on March the 8th, 1920. The conference declared Syria's independence from the Ottoman occupation. It rejected foreign intervention and the Balfour Declaration, as well as foreign mandate. It worked out a provisional constitution for Syria that consisted of 148 provisions. It was called the Basic Law. After the Sykes-Picot Pact and French occupation in the wake of the Maysalun Battle of July 24, 1920, the Syrian Conference was dissolved and the bloody chapter of the conflict between the Syrian people and the French mandate now began. The Syrians' experience with occupation was bitter, particularly at the parliament, as most of the legislative experiences were thwarted. In June 1928, the parliament worked out the first constitution for the country, but the French High Commissioner objected to its contents and dismantled the parliament. In 1931, elections were held for the formation of a new parliament, but they were cancelled due to the interference of the Foreign Mandates Authority. In 1932, new elections were held. The parliament convened. France proposed a political treaty which the parliament refused, so it was dismantled once again by the French High Commissioner. In 1936, new elections were held. The ensuing parliament lasted only for 3 years. It was dismantled again by the High Commissioner as it refused the annexation of Iskenderun province to Turkey. In 1943, legislative elections were held that led to a new parliament that lasted till May 29, 1945, when the French attacked the parliament's building in Damascus and killed its guards. The last French soldier was evacuated on April 17, 1946. Finally, Syria was now able to realize parliamentary independence and practice its normal life. Public elections were held in 1947. A parliament was formed and the era of national sovereignty and people's establishments was now born. 1973 witnessed the first legislative council that was directly elected by the people. It constituted a remarkable achievement and a big victory on the road of popular democracy. Today, our country, with all its citizens, is looking forward to a new Syria in a new era built on its new constitution.
During its first session yesterday at the headquarters of the People's Assembly, the Student Parliament discussed the most important issues concerning youth in educational and social domains and ways of overcoming the obstacles hindering their academic and educational career. The Parliament members representing various political and intellectual currents also discussed the importance of creating linkages between academic curricula and work market to facilitate job opportunities for university graduates. In Egypt, clashes erupted outside the Ministry of Defense in Cairo, killing 12 people and injuring 150 others. Egyptian sources reported that Egyptian police fired tear gas as some protesters used Molotov bombs and opened automatic machine gun fire. These clashes, which broke out yesterday, came as protesters took to the streets demanding the resignation of the military council. Bahraini opposition figure Abdel Hadi al-Khawaja announced that he will continue his 84-day hunger strike, despite the decision taken by Bahrain's highest court to order a retrial. But his wife said the ruling was meaningless and that the authorities were simply trying to buy time in the face of international pressure, pointing out that her husband's health is deteriorating. Al-Khawaja is on a hunger strike and protest at the life sentence he received from a military court in June for allegedly plotting against the state. Israeli warplanes launched an air raid at dawn today on Gaza Strip as Israeli occupation troops broke into Khan Yunis and opened fire at Palestinian houses. Israeli bulldozers dredged farmland and uprooted trees in the area. In the West Bank, Israeli occupation troops set up military barricades at the entrances of villages and towns, conducting a wide-scale arrest campaign during which 4 Palestinians were detained. Meanwhile, Israeli army demolished several houses in Salwan town and occupied Jerusalem. With this, we end our news bulletin for today. For more information about Syria and the region, you can visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Up next, the latest business.